In this demo, I'll contort CockroachDB into behaving like a blockchain, and using its rich SQL support, I'll be creating blockchain building blocks like hash chains, escrow, royalty split, and auction functions via smart-ish contracts and verification, all with a queryable history. You don't need custom indexes or VM bytecode like you would with the Bitcoin or Ethereum blockchains. With its strong isolation and ACID compliance, atomicity is free. Smart contracts are implemented either as SQL or PLPG SQL in UDFs, user-defined functions, or stored procedures. And distributed consensus is also built in. You add a node, you expand the blockchain, without every single node having to store the entire blockchain. And being absurdly resilient, you can add nodes to and from the blockchain, and your data remains online, consistent, and safe. Today, I'll build a publicly joinable 3-node CockroachDB cluster using our Kubernetes operator, and I'll join that cluster from my home machine, as anyone would be able to do with a public blockchain. Now, thanks to our operator's native support for sidecars, I'll be harnessing the network overlay from Slack called Nebula. That's how the intercommunication between the cloud cluster and my home node will be supported. To save time, I've already created the Kubernetes cluster, and that took around 4.5 minutes, and that ran this command here. If you want the code for this, just reach out. I'll clone down the Helm chart for our Kubernetes operator. I'll create a namespace. I'll install the Kubernetes operator and then wait for it to finish. Next, I'll reserve a public IP for the Nebula lighthouse. You might want to have multiple lighthouses. For this demo, I've just got one. I'll create a directory to store certificates. I'll create my Nebula CA, my lighthouse key and certificate pair, and another for my home node when I'm ready to get going with that. Next, I'll create a secret in Kubernetes to capture those certificates and keys. Let's give ourselves some more space here, and I'll wait for that to roll out. And that's already done. I'll verify that our reserved IP was applied, and it was. And let's also create a secret to store the Nebula CA. And now we'll create the CockroachDB certificates and keys. The CA, which I'll upload to Kubernetes. And then I'll install CockroachDB with the Nebula sidecar. Let's watch those come up. Notice here that we're seeing 0 of 3 containers being ready. Normally in a secure cluster, you'd have 2, CockroachDB itself and the certificate reloader. The third container here is our Nebula sidecar. One of them's ready. And the other 2. Let's generate the certificate for the root user and wait for our public load balancer to be available, which it is. I'll create a user called Rob with a password of password. And I'll open up the browser. Now this is fine. This is just my public IP, so I can ignore this certificate warning. I can log in as Rob with my password, and here's my cluster. I've got 3 nodes, all in Kubernetes, and now I can join the cluster. So now I'll fetch the Lighthouse's public IP from the cluster, and I can show you what that looks like. I'll write that into my home config, and then start Nebula on my machine. Nebula is now running, and I can discover the Nebula pod IDs. And that's what they look like. I can ping the Lighthouse server, and I can ping the individual nodes, which may relay through the Lighthouse. Now I'll map the pod host names to their Nebula IPs, and this is going to add them into my hosts file. I'll create a node certificate for my home machine using the same CA. I'll create my join addresses for the Kubernetes cluster nodes, and I'll feed that into my join flag of cockroach start. Go debug netDNS equals go will force Go's built-in resolver, which reads from my host file. So that's me joining the cluster. You can see that my Nebula logs are running. And if I come back over to my cluster over here, I've just joined the cluster. I'm actually running 26.2.3 locally, but the publicly available cluster is 25.4.6. But that's fine, that's expected. We can see that my usable space has shot up because CockroachDB can now harness my home disk, and my cluster has 4 live nodes. Let's hop on to CockroachDB. And now I can start to create my blockchain primitives. In this demo, transactions will go through a kind of pending queue. Bitcoin calls this the mempool, but because everything is flushed to disk in CockroachDB, you'll see me referring to this as pending transactions. And for my chain hash, I'll use SHA-256. Now the first table I'm going to create is called chain head. I'm not going to create it up there though. I'll create it down here. Is chain head. That has a Boolean value, which is the primary key that I'm checking has to equal true. So that's enforcing a kind of singleton table, a table that can only store 1 row. I'll insert an empty value to start off with, and that's where we'll monitor the head of our chain. Pending transactions, rather than sitting in mempool, will be in pending transactions. and then any sealed transactions will go into the ledger. You'll see what sealing means in a minute. I'll create a simple function to submit a transaction, and all that does is insert into the pending transaction table. A more complicated function to seal a block. Now this is a block of transactions. By default, I'll try up to 1,000. And to determine the validity of my hash chain, I could go through every single row computing the hashes, but instead I'll create a checkpoint table so that I can verify everything from a given hash. Here's my verify from, which can take an optional hash start. If empty, it will compute everything, as this function verify chain will do. Otherwise, I can call verify chain from checkpoint, passing in the latest checkpoint ID. And that will just validate the last part of the chain. I can verify the chain. Now that's valid. We don't have anything to validate at the moment. It's just an empty chain. But now I can start seeding it with stuff. Our first transaction will be a transfer of 100 something or other from Alice to Bob. And that's our Genesis transaction. I'll transfer 50 of something from Bob to Carol, and I'll refund 25 of something from Carol to Alice. That won't appear in the ledger yet because I haven't sealed it, but it will be in my pending transactions table. So if I seal that now, I have my first block ID. I don't have anything in pending transactions, and I do have values now in the ledger. They all share the same block ID because they were sealed at the same time. We'll submit 2 more transactions, Alice to Dave, 75, and Dave to Bob, 10. I'll seal that second block, and we've got a different hash. And now I can view the chain via the ledger. And we can see the first block chains on to the next block, which is also hashed with the previous block. And that allows us to verify that the chain is intact. So my chain is looking good. But if I try to tamper with the chain, you'll see that it's no longer valid. If I reset the value back to how it was before, the values get calculated as part of the hash. We're now back to valid. Now you can apply RBAC row level security to prevent that from happening. Now we'll look at smartish contracts. I'll create a table called accounts and a table called escrows, a place where a financial transaction is staged before the operation completes and the funds can either be released or refunded. I'll insert 3 accounts, Alice with 1,000, Bob with 500, and Carol with 250. I'll create a function to create an escrow, a function to release funds once delivery is confirmed, a function to refund an escrow amount following a dispute, and now I'll show you how that works. We'll create an escrow transaction from Alice to Bob to the tune of 200. Now the escrow ID is 9AC8, and I can take a look at the accounts. The amount from Alice has been staged, and that value of 200 has been locked with the ID 9AC8. Let's copy that and then run select escrow release to release that amount from Alice to Bob. Now, if I look at the final state, we can see that the amount of 200 has been transferred from Alice to Bob, and that 200 that was debited from Alice is now settled. The escrows table has been released, and as with the previous transaction, because this is all against the blockchain ledger, I can seal that block. Let's take a look at the chain now. We can see that our escrow block is here, tacked on to the end of the chain, so it follows. There's our hash for our escrow block, and we can see that the amount of 200 has been transferred from Alice to the escrow, and then from the escrow to Bob. Now let's look at royalty splits. I'll create a table called royalty contracts, and another called royalty splits, where you see BPS here. That just means basis points. So 10,000 basis points is equal to 100%. Here's a function that will allow me to create a royalty contract, a function that will allow someone to pay a number of people through a royalty contract. And then I'll register my intent to make a payment, let's say for a music collaboration between Alice, Bob, and Carol. So 60% of these funds will go to Alice, 30% to Bob, and 10% to Carol, a combined 100%. If I take a look at the names and balances, we're still at 800, 700, and 250 from our previous transaction. And now I can call select royalty pay. I'll copy the ID of my royalty payment contract. I'm making the payment, and let's say it's for 100 of something. That's gone through. If I now take a look at the table, Alice has received 60% of that 100, Bob has received 30%, and Alice has received 10. I'll seal that block. And as before, let's take a look at our ledger. And here's our block for the split royalty payment. From Rob, Alice received 60% of our 100, Bob 30, and Carol 10. And finally, let's do a sealed bidding auction. Bidders commit funds, the highest bidder wins, anyone who loses is refunded, and only at that point are funds transferred. So I've got a table for auctions, a table for bids, a function to create auctions, a function to create or modify a bid, and a function to close off the auction. Now, Alice has a rare NFT to sell. Her reserve is 50. Give it a couple of years, that'll be worth nothing. and I've got the auction ID here. Let's take a look at the balances. Currently we don't have any bids because I haven't placed any yet. And here are the accounts and their balances. And now let's create an auction bid against our auction on behalf of Bob to the tune of 100. Let's do another one, but for Carol to the tune of 200. So she'll have the winning bid. Let's take a look at the account balances. We can see that the amount has been staged, the 200 from Carol and the 100 from Bob. But notice that Alice hasn't received any funds yet. I can then close the auction. And at that point, we know that Carol wins the auction. If we take a look at the balances, Bob has been refunded. Carol's value still stands at 60. She's paid the 200, but this time Alice's balance has gone up by that same 200. I'll seal the block and view the ledger. Alice created the auction. Bob committed 100 to it, Carol 200. And following the auction's completion, Alice received 200 from the auction and Bob received his refund of 100. I'll run one final test. The first thing I'll do is create a table and seed it with some data, and then I'll run a workload. Now this is split into 3 stages, one that will attempt 10 requests per second, another which will attempt 100, and then 1,000 requests per second. So in 7 seconds, we'll see a spike from 10 requests per second to 100. And there it goes. But what you'll also notice is the latency up to P99 won't be drastically affected by these jumps. And again, in about 13 seconds, we'll jump again, but this time to 1,000 requests per second. And there it goes. Seal is taking slightly longer because we're sealing more blocks, but we're still going through 1,000 requests. I'm verifying the chain at each step, and every second I'm sealing any blocks that we've encountered. And then in 4 seconds, we'll stop. I finish up by checking that the error rate didn't go above 1% and also that we have a valid chain at the end of that. Now what I've shown you is a public CockroachDB cluster that you can join and the ability to create rich SQL functionality to satisfy complex behavior in a database. CockroachDB is not a replacement for a public trustless blockchain. It wasn't designed to be a blockchain and you shouldn't use it as a blockchain. But it gets you 90% of the way to a functioning blockchain. Blockchains sacrifice throughput for trustlessness. CockroachDB, on the other hand, gives you high throughput amongst trusted nodes. And if you trust your participants, you don't need a blockchain. And as always, just because you can does not mean you should.